I was 13 the last year I went trick-or-treating, old enough to feel self-conscious about it but still young enough to chase the free candy high, and my best friend Josh and I decided to go out one last time for old time's sake, just the two of us with pillowcases and cheap plastic masks, planning to hit the nicer neighborhoods across the park where people handed out full-size candy bars, but partway through the night, as the crowds started thinning and the streetlights flickered on, we wandered down a side street we didn't recognize, quiet, older houses, no decorations, no kids, just that weird stale smell of fallen leaves and cold pavement. But then we saw a porch light on at the end of the block and figured, why not, one more? So we walked up the steps of this run-down two-story house that looked abandoned except for the light above the door, and I remember knocking, not even ringing the bell, and after a long moment the door creaked open just a few inches, and this voice from the dark inside, raspy, hoarse, like someone who hadn't spoken in years, just said, "Come in," like that, not even a hello or happy Halloween, just "come in," and I laughed nervously, thinking it was part of some elaborate setup, maybe one of those haunted house type things, and Josh said, "Dude, this is sketchy," but I was already stepping through the door, which opened wider before I even touched it, and inside it smelled like damp carpet and something sour, like rotting apples or meat, and all the lights were off except a dim orange glow coming from somewhere down the hall, and I called out, "Trick or treat," trying to make a joke of it, and the door slammed shut behind us so hard the floor shook, and when we turned around, the door was gone. Just smooth wall where it had been, like it never existed, and that's when the panic hit, and Josh grabbed my arm and we started moving toward the orange light, which we could see was flickering like firelight, and it led us to a room with old wallpaper peeling from the walls and broken picture frames on the floor and a fireplace that was crackling with flames but giving off no heat, and sitting in a dusty recliner facing the fire was a man, or at least someone shaped like a man, but so thin and still he almost looked mummified, dressed in what I think was an old Halloween costume from decades ago, like a faded clown suit, and I swear to God he didn't move at all, but we both heard him whisper, "You came late," and then the fire went out in a flash and the room went black and I heard Josh scream, and when I reached for him he was just gone, no footsteps, no sound, just silence, and I fumbled in my pocket for my phone but it was dead, even though it was fully charged an hour before, and when I finally got the flashlight on, I was back in the hallway alone, with all the doors closed and no windows anywhere, like the house had rearranged itself, and I started pounding on the walls and shouting, but nothing worked. No one heard me, and the house just kept stretching, every hallway longer than the last, every door locked or leading to more darkness, and at some point I started seeing flashes of movement at the edges of the light, shapes too fast to follow, hands pulling back around corners, faces just barely visible in mirrors for a second before vanishing, and eventually I ended up in a room with dozens of Halloween costumes hanging from the ceiling like drying meat, all child-sized, all faded and old, and I saw Josh's hoodie hanging there too, still warm like he'd just taken it off, and that's when I knew I was never getting out the way I came in, and the worst part is, the house let me leave eventually. It just opened the door one morning like nothing had happened, like it was done with me. And I ran all the way home in daylight, filthy, shaking, and when I told my parents and the cops what happened, they thought I'd gotten lost in the woods and hallucinated the rest, but Josh was never found, and every Halloween since, no matter where I am, I get a knock at my door around midnight, and when I look outside, there's never anyone there. But sometimes I hear his voice, low and distant, saying, "Come in." The next few years were a blur. Halloween rolled around every year, but I couldn't bring myself to celebrate it. I couldn't look at decorations without feeling sick, couldn't hear the sound of footsteps on a porch without my heart leaping into my throat. I moved towns, thinking a fresh start would help me shake it, but every year, the knocks came. Always around midnight, always just a soft tap, 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 like it was waiting for me to answer. And when I'd check, there would be nothing, only the darkness of the street and the cold air that never seemed to leave. But last year, things changed. I'd gotten older, and after so many years of avoiding it, I decided to try and push through the fear, to face whatever it was. I thought if I just answered the door, maybe that would break the cycle. Maybe I'd find some explanation, something to make sense of it all. I stood at my door that Halloween, waiting, the silence in my apartment feeling suffocating. I had locked everything, checked the peephole, the chain, the deadbolt. But when the knock came at 12:05 a.m., I opened the door without hesitation. The porch was empty, just the usual chill in the air. But this time, something was different. Something in the shadows of the yard was moving. I thought I saw a figure, tall, thin, standing in the corner where the yard met the street, barely visible, like it had been waiting for me. My breath caught in my chest, but I forced myself to step outside. I called out into the darkness, "Who's there?" Silence answered. The wind picked up, and I felt the hairs on my neck stand. The figure, it took a step forward. My eyes went wide, recognizing the shape, the form, the same figure that had been sitting by the fire all those years ago. That thing, it was waiting for me. I turned to rush back inside, but when I looked back, it was closer. I didn't remember seeing it move, but it was now standing at the foot of my porch. Its face, if you could even call it that, was just a blank, pale space, stretched and smooth, like it was a mask, with no features, no eyes, no mouth, just that void of white. Then it whispered, low and raspy, "You should have stayed inside." And before I could scream, before I could run, the world around me shifted. My house, my street, everything warped, like the edges of reality were bending and twisting, pulling me back into the very place I'd tried to escape. And when I turned to flee, the street was gone. The familiar porch, the driveway, everything had disappeared, and I was back in that godforsaken house. The walls were closing in again, stretching toward me. The same dark hallway, the same flickering orange light. But this time, I was not alone. Josh stood in the hallway, his eyes wide, pleading, just like the last time, like he was begging me to help him. But his mouth wouldn't move. It was like he was trapped, a reflection of the past, and in that moment, I knew what had happened. I hadn't left that house when I thought I did. I had been trapped there all along, my mind playing tricks, pretending to let me go, but it was in control. The figure that had followed me all these years had never let me leave. And now, it was taking Josh, again. He reached out, his hand shaking, but the moment I touched him, the door slammed shut, and I was back in that dark room, the flames flickering cold again. And somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered, "It's your turn now." I don't know how much time has passed since that night. I don't know if anyone else has ever heard those knocks, or seen that figure, or gone into that house. But I know that I'm not alone. Every night now, in the silence before I fall asleep, I can feel them. Watching, waiting, and I'm terrified of what will happen when they come for me again. Story 2. I was 12 the year I got followed on Halloween. It started off as a normal night, my friends and I dressed up and running through the neighborhood, collecting candy from every house we could find. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first, just the usual decorations, kids laughing, and the crisp October air. But then we came across this one house on the edge of the neighborhood, one we'd never seen before. It was a tall, old house, with a cracked porch light flickering in the dark. There were no other kids around, and it looked like the house hadn't been decorated at all. It was just too quiet. My friends weren't sure about it, but we went up anyway, figuring the people there were probably just ignoring the holiday. When we knocked, the door creaked open almost immediately, and standing in the doorway was a man, tall, gaunt, with hollow eyes that made me feel uneasy even before he spoke. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at us for a long time, his gaze like ice. Then, with a voice that barely made a sound, he said, "Come in. It's cold out here." I felt a chill run through me, but my friends, eager for more candy, stepped in without hesitation. I hesitated. There was something wrong, something about the man's stare and the house itself that didn't sit right, but my friends had already gone in. I followed, not wanting to seem scared. The door shut behind me with a thud, too loud, and suddenly the atmosphere felt even heavier. Inside was dark, with only a dim light coming from down a hallway that stretched into shadows. It smelled stale, like old books and something else I couldn't quite place, and as we stood there, we heard a faint noise, like someone shuffling in the back room. I didn't want to be rude, so I took a piece of candy from the bowl he held out, but I noticed my friends weren't moving. They were just standing there, eyes wide, looking past me, into the dark hallway. I turned to ask what was wrong when I saw it. The shape of something moving down the hall. It was tall, its outline barely visible in the low light. The man didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't care. "Go ahead and enjoy your treat," he whispered, his voice colder than before, as he backed into the shadows. I felt a cold panic settle in my chest, but before I could say anything, my friends started walking toward the hallway, almost like they were hypnotized. I tried to stop them, but no words came out. I grabbed at their sleeves, but their skin felt cold, unnaturally cold, like the chill in the air had crept into them. One of my friends, Rachel, looked at me with eyes that weren't her eyes. They were blank, empty. "Come on, just one more room," she said, her voice not her own. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away toward the door, but the man was there, standing between me and the exit, blocking the way. "Not yet," he said, his smile wide, stretching too far across his face. "You're not done yet." The air grew heavier, and the walls seemed to close in on me. I was trapped. Desperate, I turned and ran, pushing through my friends, ignoring the strange murmurs behind me, trying not to look at their empty eyes as I ran down the hallway, stumbling over the uneven floorboards. I didn't stop until I was back outside, gasping for air, but when I turned around, the house was gone. It was just gone. The porch light was off, the street was silent, and all that remained was the vague shape of a house where I knew it had been. I ran home, too scared to look back, too scared to think about what had just happened. But it didn't end there. Every Halloween after that, I'd hear footsteps behind me as I walked down the street. At first, I thought it was just another kid trying to scare me, but the footsteps always stayed at the same distance. Always just out of sight. It wasn't until I turned the corner one night and saw a man standing in the shadows, his face obscured by the darkness, that I realized it was him. The same man from the house, staring at me without moving. His eyes were dark, hollow, like they had been waiting for me all this time. I don't go trick or treating anymore. I don't even go outside on Halloween. Every year, around the same time, I can hear those footsteps behind me, soft and deliberate, and I know it's him, still following me. And I'm scared, so scared, that one day, I won't be able to outrun him. It's been a few years now since that night, but the footsteps still follow me every Halloween, without fail. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the more it happened, the harder it became to ignore. Last year, I made the mistake of going out for a walk on Halloween night. It was late, and I thought maybe I could confront whatever it was that had been haunting me. I knew I shouldn't, but the desire to face it, to know what had happened that night at the house, was too strong. I walked through the quiet streets, trying to act casual, but my heart was pounding, and the hairs on my neck stood up the entire time. The houses were decorated, the usual jack-o'-lanterns and fake cobwebs, but something felt off. I was halfway down the block when I heard it. The footsteps. At first, they were soft, like someone was following me at a distance. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one. Just the empty street. I tried to shake it off, but then they came again, closer this time, tap, tap, tap. I started walking faster, my breath short, but the footsteps matched my pace. It was as if whoever was following me knew exactly when I moved, when I sped up. And I realized then that I wasn't imagining it. Someone, something, was really behind me. I turned a corner onto an alleyway, hoping to shake it, but when I looked back, there he was. The man, standing at the end of the alley, just like he had in the house, his face shadowed and his eyes darker than ever. He was still far enough away that I couldn't make out his features clearly, but the way he stood, motionless, watching, made my blood run cold. I turned to run, but the alley stretched on, longer than it should have, like it was never ending. No matter how fast I ran, I couldn't seem to escape. The footsteps were louder now, like he was right behind me, but I dared not look back. I couldn't risk it. My legs burned as I pushed myself harder, but then I slammed into something hard, something that shouldn't have been there. I stumbled back, falling into the dirt, and when I looked up, I realized what I had run into. It was the house. The same house. The one from that night, the one I thought had disappeared. The porch light flickered on, casting an eerie glow on the cracked front door, and I could see him now, closer, his face pale and emotionless, standing in the doorway, just like before. He didn't say anything, didn't move, but I knew what was about to happen. I tried to run again, but the alley was gone. The whole street was gone. The world around me felt like it was warping, and I was trapped in the same nightmare. My hands trembled as I reached for my phone, but there was no signal. The air felt suffocating, and I could hear the man's voice now, just a whisper, but it was enough to freeze me in place. "You shouldn't have come back." The moment those words hit me, the ground beneath me shifted. The walls of the alley, the houses, everything started to blur and distort, as if reality itself was unraveling. I closed my eyes, desperate to escape, but when I opened them again, I was back in the old house. The air smelled stale and suffocating, and the dim light flickered above me. There were no windows, no way out. Just the man, standing in front of me. And this time, I could see him clearly. His face was impossibly pale, stretched thin, his eyes black pits, as if his entire face was a mask of empty space. I felt a wave of terror wash over me, my body paralyzed with fear. "You're mine now," he whispered, stepping closer. And I knew that I would never leave this house. The walls were closing in on me, pressing in from every direction, and my scream echoed in the silence, but it felt like no sound left my body. I reached out, but my hands passed through him, like he wasn't even real. I spun around, desperate for an exit, but the room twisted into something darker, colder. I don't remember how long I stood there, lost in the dark, but when I woke up, I was outside again, standing on the sidewalk, the cold night air biting into my skin. The street was silent, the houses were normal, the Halloween decorations were still up. I looked around, everything seemed like it had before, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And then I heard it again, the sound of footsteps, slowly, deliberately, walking toward me from behind. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I didn't need to turn around. I just started running faster than I'd ever run before, and I haven't stopped since. Every year, I stay inside on Halloween, locking every door, drawing every curtain. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind is still and the world is quiet, I can hear those footsteps. Tap, tap, tap. And I know, deep down, that I'm not free. He's still out there, waiting, watching, and I'm just waiting for the day when he finally catches up to me.